When people discuss the scariest moments in film, they often describe their feelings of surprise, a moment of stillness, only for... Many horror movies slowly build suspense and then quickly release it, creating jump scares. They use tension as a tool to precede what they consider the true terror, treating the tension like an appetizer instead of the main course. But the tension is the entree. Most of the scariest moments in film add to the dread without telegraphing the climax. They don't let your fear turn into adrenaline, that moment when the character screams and runs away, when the threat's intentions become clear. The best moments force you to stare at the screen, questioning the nature of its contents. True terror comes from the uncertainty of the unknown, the implications of information, the danger of what's to come. Which brings us to someone I've talked about before, a man so unsatisfied with the examination of one human mind that he decided to expand his musings to the entire world, writing and directing one of cinema's most dreadful, most bleak, most provocative horror movies, Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse. Pulse explores and links together many ideas, including isolation, suicide, depression, and death, using the early stages of the internet as its device, and it repeatedly juxtaposes these ideas, even opposing ones through its visuals, questioning their relationship to one another. The film contemplates a future defined by the paradox of isolated connection, the physical separation of people paired with their non-physical communication, their yearning for connection while maintaining distance. The advent of the internet and its ability to connect people many miles apart can have unintended, even paradoxical, consequences, leaving people feeling more isolated, not less than ever before, pushing them into a solitary space separate from everything, a feeling mirrored by the ghosts in the film, by their eternal loneliness after death. Pulse raises many questions, but leaves nearly all of them open to interpretation. It's a complicated film, providing little more than theories for its story, with both the characters and the audience submerged in layers of confusion, doing anything they can to explain the strange phenomena. Dark stains on the wall, strangers wandering on computers, friends disappearing only to return a husk of their former selves. A flawed film, Pulse seems more concerned with constructing an impenetrable sense of dread, a mood that you can almost touch, than with presenting a coherent idea. But despite its weaknesses, this approach not only succeeded in developing that unforgettable atmosphere, but built upon it to create some of the most influential and terrifying moments in horror cinema, one of which has already been broken down as well as anyone could hope for. So I'll just talk about its second scariest scene, just one of many influenced by the first.
もう撮影する前から5月でしたっけ、打ち合わせの時から要するに監督的にはものすごく長いカットで来た来たってお客さんがこう目を閉じてでもう終わったかなって手を離してもまだいるっていうのをやりたいっていうことを言ってたんですよ。
Much like Kurosawa's earlier film, Cure, Pulse manages to maintain constant tension throughout nearly all of its runtime. And as the level of this tension changes, so does the method the film achieves it. It might use sound, raising the pitch, the volume, or removing it altogether. It might use blocking, positioning the actors to change power dynamics or the control of information. In this scene, however, it does a bit of everything. Let's start from the top. To set the stage, we have a world where everyone else seems to have vanished, so the remaining survivors, Michi and Kawashima, look to drive as far as they can in hopes of escaping the same fate. But first, they need gas, so Kawashima returns to a place he just left, leaving an area that seemed safe, that had another person, to go back inside an old warehouse, alone. The shift in lighting mirrors the shift in safety, going from light to dark. Making use of sound as well, the echoes in the warehouse reveal its enormous space, the extreme emptiness engulfing Kawashima, his isolation, his vulnerability. The scene then raises this baseline level of tension through long takes and slow camera movements, sliding just to the right to reveal the danger lurking nearby. Up to this point, we've learned that red tape signifies the presence of a ghost, so its reveal, combined with Kawashima's ignorance, his back turned away, creates suspense, making us question how this door will come into play. And then it opens, seemingly moving on its own. As it continues, we cut to its perspective, facing Kawashima's back, removing our objective view of the scene, our ability to see any potential threat that may have emerged from behind the door, and making us wonder what, if anything, is approaching Kawashima. But nothing happens. So Kawashima, still oblivious to the open door, tries to seal the tank of gasoline, only for the top to fall and begin rolling away, releasing an ominous echo as it moves into the dark room, which, much like the warehouse, makes it feel larger, like it has no end, an infinite void. And when Kawashima begins walking towards the room, this space so dark that it seems to go on forever, all of these elements, the darkness, the space, the sound, once again raise the impending dread, like he's walking into a trap, an inescapable dungeon without time. If that room doesn't look like death, I don't know what does. When he gets inside, the door closes, again appearing to move by itself. If Kawashima's situation didn't seem hopeless before, it does now. But the film makes sure to show Kawashima looking back, his lack of a reaction creating some sense of security, suggesting that nothing lies between him and the door. And what destroys this feeling of safety isn't a visual, but a sound. Alright, man. Everything in this scene, the red tape, the door opening, the general atmosphere, initially pointed to this room containing a ghost, but then gave us reasons to believe it didn't, which, even if only briefly, dropped our defenses, allowing for something to sneak in, or perhaps reveal itself after having already been there, and make us feel completely vulnerable, trapped with an unseen presence just a few feet away. The ghost's voice is strained, speaking in fragments, and with a powerful cut, we can finally see the source of the sound, but just barely, his image mixing with the darkness in the room, creating little more than a vague shape. You see, Kurosawa wanted the ghosts to appear flat. He considered them two-dimensional instead of 3D. The ghost's face seems human, but only vaguely, having almost no detail. His lack of eyes or clear division between his facial features make him feel untrustworthy, his intentions unclear. The camera then changes sides to move behind both the ghost and Kawashima instead of between them. Doing this flips the arrangement of the room, placing the door on the right instead of the left, disorienting the viewer to mirror Kawashima's feeling of shock. And the ghost's words only add to this confusion, alluding to vague ideas and emotions that further cloud his motivations, his speech and appearance blurring the line between human and ghost to create an uncanny amalgamation of both. With both characters now occupying the screen at the same time, the spatial relationship between them becomes clear, allowing us to see how the actions of one directly affect the other. As Kawashima fails to escape, the ghost moves closer, but Kawashima refuses to acknowledge his existence, turning away and completely obscuring the ghost. Here, the film once again withholds information from the audience, but now it does so on screen and in real time, instead of through a cut or some other editing tricks, making this already untrustworthy figure even more dubious by showing its disappearance, removing our ability to see what it's doing. But when Kawashima slowly turns to face the ghost, hoping he's vanished, he's still there. And the scene maintains this constant tension, making you question what the ghost will do, believing it's threatening. We're paying so much attention to the ghost that we notice his subtle movements, expecting that they'll build into a full attack on Kawashima. But instead, he just stands there. Still unable to open the door, Kawashima thinks he can make the ghost disappear by touching it, so he charges forward. Knowing he's a ghost, we expect him to be intangible, but Kawashima ends up grabbing him like a regular person, completely disrupting our preconceptions, transforming the ghost from a mere concept to a reality. Kurosawa wanted the audience to think of the ghost as an illusion, only to reveal that it's not. And to express that idea, they needed to visualize the physicality of the ghost, so they had Kawashima literally touch him. He's not an illusion, he's real, and he can affect the physical world just like anyone else. With Kawashima now on the ground, we see his vulnerability, his low position relative to the ghost, with his face only partially lit, as if the ghost gives off light while shrouded in darkness, another juxtaposition of opposites, a paradox. Now in complete control, we cut to the ghost, kicking off a shot that lasts for an entire minute. Looking up, we share Kawashima's perspective, his experience, feeling what he feels as the ghost looks directly into the camera, into us. We see this dark shape moving closer, his face becoming clearer but never beyond the uncanny, his details never quite becoming human. And the sounds only make the moment more unsettling, using a soft drone that flows into a dial-up tone, harkening back to the origins of these spirits. The ghost continues moving closer, refusing to release the tension, and just when it seems it can't increase any further, we see his eyes, a pair of hyper-detailed orbs juxtaposed against his shadowy face, a visual kicking off a high-pitched tone that mixes with the low buzz. All these images and sounds create a disturbing fusion between the ghost and the human, between the shadow and the detail, between the dark and the light. To visualize the ghost's overwhelming influence over Kawashima, we see its size, taking up nearly the entire screen. After having watched this moment over and over, seeing the actor's actual face is so off-putting. Even without the added effects and lighting, just the movement and unbroken stare make him seem dangerous. So much force in those eyes.
テレシネ見ると分かるんですけど、塩谷さん瞬きしてないじゃないですか。ずーっと近づいてきて、最後やっぱ目が充血して涙が潤んでるんですよ。それはやっぱ生かしてあげたいっていうのも実はあったりして。
Kurosawa didn't want it to seem like the ghost's face triggered any thoughts in Kawashima's mind, so he cut away just before you'd have that interpretation.
一番避けたいなと思うのは、最後だんだん大きくなってきた時に何かイメージであったり雰囲気であったりするところに行ってしまうのが、こいつはこうだったっていうことでありたいんですよね、あくまで。
But then we finally cut to Kawashima's reaction, a face so overwhelmed that it can do nothing but stare. And that's it. We don't see exactly what happens to Kawashima. The scene doesn't end with a jump scare or dramatic sound effect. It simply cuts back outside, forcing us to theorize what happened, what exactly the ghost did to him, much like the other victims in the film. It brings us so close to the answer without fully revealing it. And sometimes that's the scariest thing. To know something's there, but to not know what it is. Thanks for watching.